In a previous video, we talked about Prime Minister Sophia Hopkins and her fall from power. To many in the country, the longevity and power of Hopkins represented socialism in its purest form. Her successors would never quite live up to her premiership, and the chaos that ensued left a sour taste in people's mouths. When Hopkins resigned on 17th of October 2470, Melanie Monroe, who had been acting Prime Minister for nearly 2 years at that point, also resigned due to poor health. With its two most popular members out of the picture, the party had a large power vacuum. Neither woman endorsed any candidate in the following socialist leadership election, which kicked off with 25 candidates. After several damaging rounds of debates, the final 3 candidates were presented to the Socialist Party membership with different ideas for the future of the party. The first candidate, Klara Willows, ran on a continuation of Hopkins' manifesto. The second, Isabella Watts, believed in opening up the country more and letting businesses be more competitive with the High Kingdoms, a platform which would shift the Socialist Party much closer to the Liberal Party. The third candidate, Vincent Burken, believed that Hopkins had not gone far enough and pushed for more radical nationalization and regulatory laws, aiming to take the party further left. Internally, the Socialist Party had many factions. The most prominent was Hopkins' own SK faction, which held the highest membership. Eventually, with SK's help, Willows won the contest and became the new Prime Minister of Empherias. Other internal factions, like the more moderate LZV and ZEKL, accepted the continuation of the status quo over a shift further left, while some groups, such as the SCR and the SLF, were won over with some minor concessions. Controversially, she did not opt to call a snap election in early 2471, instead finishing the 5-year term started by Hopkins in 2468. Unfortunately for Willows, her premiership began terribly. During her first question time in Parliament, she was grilled heavily on her record as a cabinet minister and even insulted by some of her MPs. Many on the opposition benches claimed the government had no clear direction. Weeks into her term, prominent cabinet member John Saber resigned in disgrace after it was revealed he was lobbying on behalf of major corporations and had handed out tax breaks to friends. Another cabinet member, Peter Meesex, resigned following suspension after he had extorted over 7 million krona to pay off debt and cover up sexual assault allegations against him. These high-profile scandals were damaging to the Socialist Party popularity, though since the crimes had taken place under Hopkins, they did not severely harm Willows' reputation. It would be a different controversy which arose to further dent Willows' chances of turning the party around and regaining Hopkins' height. Toward the end of Hopkins' tenure, public housing construction in Empherias had begun speeding up. Safety regulations had been relaxed, and simpler, smaller, more brutalist buildings had been preferred, leading to a large number of affordable housing units in the country's major cities. However, as opposed to large apartment buildings, almost all of the construction went into single-family homes, creating huge suburban sprawls instead of the dense urban centers people desired. Higher demand for personal cars also led many green spaces to be paved over, in some cities reaching extremes, such as in Rome, which became known as the Grey Metropolis. Many of these houses fell into disrepair, purchased by wealthier individuals as second homes only to sit with little maintenance for years. Others came to serve primarily as homes for immigrants, instead of the native citizens. Then, in 2471, the Gasnitet Report was published. The report found that following the large and deadly Nguyen fire of 2469, the government had looked into the root cause and found that housing places such as Rome's and Mertens had inadequate fire safety, including faulty wiring, insufficient smoke detectors, and highly flammable building materials. Several cabinet members then hid this information from the public in fear of backlash. To many people, this was a betrayal of those who lost their lives in unnecessary fires, and many saw it shocking that the government didn't even change the housing regulations or increase inspections to ensure safety afterwards. Many liberals criticized this approach and called for housing to become a fully privatized matter. Even some socialists criticized the policy for either its bad efficiency or lack of good planning. Many from both sides called for a more neighborhood-specific approach and for house building to become a council matter. Willow's government also saw other shortfalls, such as the high wages of Empherias in comparison to other HPA members, causing a small brain drain, as well as controversy over Empheri farmers going out of business against Narrated farmers could produce more crops for cheaper with their government subsidies. Despite falling popularity among the electorate, Willows was still able to secure a win in the 73 general election. The Socialist Party took the plurality in the election, with 295 out of 600 seats, up from 274 in the 68 elections, but failed to secure a majority in Parliament. Willows was not able to capture Hopkins' early wave of support, with exit polling from the time suggesting Willows managed to win back around 1/5 of the voters who said they switched parties due to Hopkins herself. Still, Willows and the Socialists did still manage to secure a victory, being ahead of the Liberals by 60 seats. To many, this was the first change in leadership in well over 20 years, and many were willing to give the party one last try under a new leader. While not a majority government, they could work with other minor parties to get back on track. However, Willows never actually implemented any major policies after the election, as she would end up dying during childbirth in less than a year into her term. Chancellor of the Exchequer, Stephen Rettels, was made acting Prime Minister, while the real successor was selected. Rettels himself was a member of the SDZ faction, and had been appointed to appease their membership. Rettels concocted a plan with the family of Willows to prevent an official leadership contest from happening, and to ensure Vincent Burken, his ally, would become a party leader and thus Prime Minister. Unfortunately for them, Burken was easily the least popular of the possible contenders, with little practical experience in cabinet positions, a more extremist viewpoint, strong opposition from members of the Socialist Party's SK and LZV factions, and a general dislike among the very populace. Making it even worse for the Socialists, the collapsing nuclear exchange in 2474 caused economic disruption and panic amongst the government and general public, spurred on by the media and leaving Burken's young administration floundering. While he wanted to implement subsidies for agriculture, urban development reform, and more, internal opposition from his own party was blocking his plans. Burken began a purge of Willows' cabinet members who wanted to be more conservative and pragmatic in their response to the economic crisis. Other high-profile resignations weakened Burken's position, leading to the Socialists losing their first vote in the parliament. When 32 Socialist MPs rebelled and voted against Burken's proposed reform to the Healthcare Act, the Liberal opposition then spoke at the House, and opposition leader Scarlett May called Burken unelected, untrustable, and unsustainable. The internal factions of the Socialist Party also caused significant damage to Burken during his time in office. Burken lost several more government votes as the SK and LZV whipped its MPs to vote against key policies. The final straw was when the proposed 2475 budget, which included the mandatory nationalization of land-estate companies, was voted down by Parliament despite the nominal Socialist majority. Opposition leader Scarlett May met with the president of the High Kingdoms and claimed that the socialist government in Empherias had clearly lost confidence in the House after several government defeats and a budget defeat, and that someone needed to restore the order. The newly elected president of the High Kingdoms, fellow Liberal Serene Gilderham, then ordered the dissolution of the parliament and fresh elections to be held in November. Burken condemned the move heavily as undemocratic, beginning to accuse the High Kingdom's deep state of merely being scared of his leftist policies. In the ensuing 75 general elections, Scarlett May's charisma and appeal was undeniably helpful to the Liberals, as was her friendship with the president and the advantageous election date he granted her. The media also successfully portrayed Burken as an extremist, as even some internal factions within the Socialist Party wanted and pushed for the Socialists to fail. Furthermore, the staleness of socialist policy and instability of the past 7 years pushed the public to vote for an alternative for the first time in a generation. When all the votes were counted, the Liberals had easily won, ending 34 years of continuous socialist rule over Empherias. May received a slim majority, winning 305 out of 600 seats, but it was enough to end all socialist influence over the parliament, as they lost 70 seats. The loss to the Liberals would begin a decade-long stint in opposition and 3 consecutive election defeats for the Socialists. The Socialist Party's infighting allowed the Liberals to implement plenty of legislation over the next 12 years. As they were unable to form a real opposition, the reputation of the Socialists was ruined, and their approval rates continued to steadily drop. The public came to associate the Socialist Party with the final controversial years of Hopkins' affair, Willows' death, and Burken's extremity, and it would take the party many years to rebuild their support with the public. The Liberal Party would maintain control for 12 years. By 2501, the Socialist Party would eventually collapse under its own weight, due to decades of factional infighting. No prominent leftist party would ever rise again in Empherias, with the closest being the center-left Labour Party. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and check out some of our other videos. Thank you for watching the West Alaxian War video, which just hit 1,000 views.